Hey guys, how's it going? ChromeOS is pretty neat because it's an operating system designed around a web browser. That means you don't get the huge range of apps from Windows or Android, but instead you get an internet terminal for doing things online. Does this approach actually work though? Well, let's take a deeper look at it and compare it to Windows and Android. Welcome back to Reviews for Life. Let's begin. First, the price. You can't just get ChromeOS as a piece of standalone software. Instead, you have to get it bundled with a Chromebook. In general, these go from about $200 to $1,000, which is pretty reasonable considering that it's a whole computer. Now, price doesn't tell you everything, so let's take a look at what features we're buying. Let's start with the security. Looking at the supported devices, there's no concrete number for the years of updates, but they seem to generally range from 5 to 8 years from when the device was first released. Comparing this to Android tablets, Samsung offers 4 years of security updates to their Galaxy line, and Windows has a history of 10. Now, this is important because it shows planned obsolescence with ChromeOS and Android. Since you can only get the operating system bundled with the hardware, it means that the operating system is not transferable if you decide to upgrade. Now, this doesn't mean the device is going to brick the day it stops receiving updates. In fact, it'll probably still run whatever programs you need very well. But if you use the device to handle email, bank info, and other personal credentials, it does mean the device is vulnerable to hacking down the line. To me, this business model creates a lot of e-waste, but makes sense from a business perspective. Now, let's talk about usability. And this part gets a lot more subjective, so bear with me. For those who don't know, there is a portable mode for ChromeOS, but the experience is only okay. This is because gestures such as swipe down to show notifications and swipe up to show home screen are not present. Instead, swiping down does nothing and swiping up shows the taskbar and app drawer. It's not necessarily a bad interface, just different. Speaking of the app drawer, the only way to sort it alphabetically is by moving the icons manually. That said, the Chrome browser does carry over some of its Android gestures, so there is some redemption there. I've seen a lot of criticism about ChromeOS being unintuitive, and that's absolutely true, if you're approaching it as an Android tablet. Now, things change once a keyboard and mouse are attached, because it puts ChromeOS into desktop mode. Here, applications become windowed, with a menu bar at the top. This means you can have multiple apps that span across the screen all at once. It's especially useful when you have an external display and want to do some multitasking. So then how does it actually differ from Windows? Well, it boils down to what you can do offline. Since ChromeOS is intended to be a cloud device, lightweight programs such as text editors and slideshows work very well both online and off. But heavier programs that are accessed through the web browser will require an internet connection. Windows, on the other hand, allows you to download and install whatever programs that you need, so you can go offline to avoid the COVID and the 5Gs. But to get a better feel for how ChromeOS performs on low-tier devices, I'll be running it on a Lenovo Duet. It's a $200 tablet with an 8-core CPU and 4 gigs of RAM. Google Docs and Microsoft Word Online both work very well through the web browser. Doing more demanding things like playing YouTube while video chatting causes significant lag when trying to navigate. For browser-based games like Slither.io, there was significant lag while playing, especially around the busy areas with lots of players. This shows that you can run Chromebooks on low specs, but for anything more demanding, you'll want specs that match. If you own a Chromebook with better hardware, let me know how it performs in the comments. Moving on to the App Store, it's really a hit or miss. There are some apps that work very well, such as YouTube and Twitch, and I was quite surprised how well picture-in-picture works. To me, this is pretty big because I never found it useful on my phone, but it does make sense on a bigger screen like this tablet. Now, when you install third-party apps like Microsoft Word, it doesn't work as well because the app doesn't support click and drag, and sometimes the app locks up when it's trying to sync to the cloud. Even Google Docs sometimes show a black border where the toolbar is supposed to be. As for games, I tried playing some Hearthstone, and it's quite obvious that the game was optimized for a touchscreen and not with a mouse and keyboard. For example, there's no option to make it windowed in the menu. Also, things like hover to see card descriptions are not present, and instead you have to click and hold for that option. One thing I like a lot is the ease of creating a Linux virtual machine simply by toggling a setting. It's a command line interface, but the stuff you save here gets saved locally to the device. This feature is very useful if you're a programmer because it saves you the headache of having to wrestle with your tools. I remember several years ago, when I first used ChromeOS, installing Crouton was a nightmare. There was a whole bunch of issues with wireless drivers, keyboard layouts, and sound drivers. Anyways, I'm pretty happy I don't have to do that ever again. Finally, there's a few quality of life features that make the desktop experience more pleasant. For example, you can remap the modifier keys on the keyboard and change mouse sensitivity. Speaking of the mouse, one thing that's missing is the scroll wheel acceleration. There's also a few additional useful features for when a phone is paired. You can unlock the Chromebook, use Wi-Fi tethering, and text messaging. I don't use these features often, but they're certainly nice to have. So to sum up, ChromeOS is a lightweight desktop operating system with the main feature being the Chrome browser. As long as whatever you're doing is within the browser, everything feels fast and responsive. Devices are generally pretty cheap, with new devices expecting about 7 years of security support. There's quite a few quality of life features that make the overall desktop experience more pleasant. If you're a power user, you can enable Linux simply by toggling a setting. There's also multi-monitor support, but not all apps support windowed mode. As for the negatives, tablet mode works, but it's really not designed to be used this way. Similarly, this is intended to be a cloud device, so expect minimal offline support. Dedicated apps are optimized for tablets, so they don't have mouse hover support and sometimes lack windowed mode. If you want to play games on low-end hardware, it will struggle. Similarly, if you want to do a bunch of heavy multitasking, ChromeOS is still heavily dependent on hardware, so you'll need to get specs that match your demands. There are also some minor issues, such as no sorting for apps and scroll wheel sensitivity controls. Overall, ChromeOS has come a long way since I first used it several years ago. It's a different take compared to the typical desktop operating system, and for some, having quick access to stuff in the cloud is all that's needed. Alright, that's it from me. If you've enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.